Mr. Singh and Ms. May, they have both said that there are no members of their party who are named in the report. So I'll ask you again, are there any current Liberal caucus members named in the NSICOP report that are wittingly or semi-wittingly participants in foreign interference?
I will allow Mr. Singh and Ms. May to speak for themselves.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Go FU News. If this is your first time at the channel, welcome. Thank you for watching. If not, if you've been following for a couple of years, you'll know that I actually don't do videos like this. This is the first one. But, and don't worry, I'm still going to continue to do the short Go FU News videos. I love doing those, and they're hopefully good for getting a laugh and pointing at some inconsistencies in what we're being told and some hypocrisy. But sometimes issues come up where you want a little bit more in-depth analysis. You want to talk about it a little bit more. And the short videos aren't really a great vehicle for doing that. Also, I suppose I could talk about it on the podcast, but I want that to be a bit more of a free-flowing conversation. Don't really want to dominate that with one particular thing. So, yeah, we're going to do this. It's going to be good. Give it a go. And we can talk about what happened, what it means for Canadians, and what might happen next as a result. So, and I think it'll be helpful just to kind of clarify some things. There's been a lot of conflicting reports in the news in the last week or so, a lot of different headlines. If you kind of only somewhat follow or don't really follow the news and the politics at all, hopefully this will help clear some things up, give you an idea of what's going on, and sort of cut through all the noise. So what is happening? Basically, we had last week a committee of parliamentarians table a report. It was redacted, so we don't get to read it all. But essentially, it was saying that these parliamentarians who have had access to top secret information, who've gone through over 30,000 pages of documents, have now come forward with a report. It's about 100 pages. And even though some parts of it are redacted to the public, what we know from what they've said is that there are members of parliament and maybe senators, people who are currently in our government and formerly in our government, who have either both wittingly and unwittingly, so knowingly aided foreign actors to undermine Canadian interests in ways that one expert has described could be treason. So it's obviously huge news. Now, is it really huge news? No, not really, in the sense that we've known that foreign interference has been going on in Canada for some time, at some level. I think the big part of this particular story is that we now have the Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP, coming out directly to the public and saying, essentially, we have people who are actively helping foreign states against Canadian interests, and basically letting us know, because nothing seems to be being done about it. We don't actually have a foreign interference law on the books. Like, anyone who's committing, quote, foreign interference, they have to be convicted with the laws that we have in the justice system right now. And sure, there's a law against treason, but that only relates specifically to military or scientific secrets, or if you do something with violence against the government. But the kind of meddling that's currently going on at all levels of government, federal, provincial, municipal, what have you, based on this report, we are sorely under-equipped to deal with as far as our legal system goes, because not only do we not have any laws against, quote, foreign interference, but the way that we know that these things are happening is through intelligence from Canada's intelligence service, the equivalent of America's CIA, and the intelligence that's gathered in that way, it doesn't oftentimes meet the threshold for evidence in a court of law. Like, CSIS, the intelligence service, can't just give that information to the RCMP and to qualify as evidence in a court of law. And not only that, but if they were to do so, then all of a sudden it would reveal the nature of how we were able to obtain this information. So it would put operators that we have in the field and our methods in jeopardy of being discovered. So that's not really an option. But what it leaves us with is essentially no recourse. We have a situation now where parliamentarians know that there are other parliamentarians who are not acting in the interest of Canada despite being elected to do so, and they're not even able to tell the public who they are. And were an election to be called, you have the potential of Canadians voting for someone who is actively going to work against their interests and for a foreign state. So it's quite a predicament. And, to make matters worse or more confusing, of the few people who've managed to read the unredacted report and actually look at what they're saying and who's committing what potentially could be treason. So you have the leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, and the leader of the the New Democratic Party, Jagmeet Singh. They've both been able to read the complete report, and one of them came out and said, "I'm not worried," and the other one came out and said, "There are traitors." So it's a little bit confusing, to say the least. But what we do know is that, or what we can safely assume, based on people's self-interest and rationality, is that there are no MPs in the unredacted report who are in the Green Party, and there are no MPs in the unredacted report who are in the NDP. Because if they were, based on what both Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May have said, we would have been informed of that, and they would have taken action. They've both explicitly come out and said that no MPs in their party have been named in the report. So after that happened, a journalist decided to ask Trudeau a similar question while in Italy at the G7 summit, showing off his Ukrainian, and they said, "Hey, Elizabeth May said there's no MPs in her party in the report. Jagmeet Singh said there's no MPs in his party in the report. Are there any MPs in your party, the Liberal Party, in the report?" And Trudeau gives his usual, we're taking foreign interference very seriously, and we have been since 2015, which is a flat-out lie, because we all know that in the past couple of elections, Trudeau's party, the Liberals, have benefited from foreign interference. There was interference against Aaron O'Toole in the Conservative Party, and which ultimately benefited the Liberals. And we know that at least one Liberal MP has to be named in the unredacted report, because Han Dong, that information came out last year, 2 years ago, that his nomination was suspect because he was the preferred candidate of China. So they had organized for busloads of international Chinese students to be bussed into his riding for the Liberal nomination with falsified address documents to claim that they lived in the area and therefore could vote in the nomination race and to vote for Han Dong. So he ended up being the Liberal candidate, and he was essentially set up by China. So that's common knowledge. What's worse is that Trudeau pretends that he didn't know that. He set up the NSICOP, the Committee of Parliamentarians, to keep an eye out on for these things, 2017 or thereabouts. And then when they report on the foreign interference operations, which, in that particular instance, it had nothing to do with helping the Liberals. They were just trying to pick their Liberal candidate. But in the general election, their interference was definitely anti-conservative, and so therefore helped the Liberals. But even when being informed about China preferring that candidate in his Liberal Party, he didn't do anything about it. So we know he knows about this stuff, and he just has been choosing to be quiet about it because it would look bad for him, and he's probably guilty of much more. We don't know, but the fact that he's unwilling to say that none of his MPs are in the report speaks volumes. I mean, if it was only Han Dong, the likelihood of him saying that one of his MPs were in the report, I think, would actually be higher, because that information is largely already public. He could say only Han Dong, but no one else. But because he hasn't said that, and because he hasn't said anything, we can assume that it's even worse than that. So we're just stuck here trying to figure out what's going on, because he won't say anything, and what Elizabeth May and what Jagmeet Singh will say is conflicting, and they're the only other ones who've read the undocumented report. And hilariously, like Elizabeth May, I don't know what's wrong with her, but she seems to not understand what words means, because first she comes out and says, listen, she was the first one to read the unredacted report. She said, "I'm not worried, about anyone sitting in the House of Commons with me. There's no one working against Canada's interests." And then shortly after, Jagmeet Singh reads the report and comes out and says, there are people who are doing things that are unethical, and there are people they're traitors based on what they're doing. So we have one person saying, "I'm not worried," and one person saying there are traitors. And meanwhile, Trudeau won't say anything. So it's a little bit difficult to figure out what's going on. And then to confuse it even further, Elizabeth May comes out again and says, well, I don't want to contradict what Jagmeet Singh's saying. I'm not contradicting him, but meanwhile, we've come to completely different conclusions, and I'm not going to change what I said, and he's certainly not going to change what he said. And like, let's not forget for a second that he's still propping up the Liberal government. He's said there's traitors. He said Trudeau knows there's a certain level of foreign interference. He says Trudeau's okay with that, and he's still propping them up. I guess we're all supposed to be retarded and think that he's doing the right thing. I mean, he's claiming that, so he clearly thinks he can sell that, but I digress. So May came out again. Elizabeth May came out again after Jagmeet Singh said his bit about the report, and and she's trying to make it seem as though they're not conflicting. Yet meanwhile, things that Jagmeet Singh says are traitorous, she can't even bring herself to say that they're unethical. Like she won't say a single word really against any of the MPs. It's all, it's open to interpretation. Okay. So you're going to give Han Dong the benefit of the doubt there when all of a sudden busloads of Chinese international students show up to the Liberal nomination race? Like he has no idea what's going on. Meanwhile, he's having private conversations with the Chinese ambassador while the two Michaels are still detained in China, and Trudeau doesn't know about that, according to him. So he's having private conversations while two Canadians are illegally detained in China with the Chinese ambassador, and he doesn't know anything about the illegal bullshit that they're pulling to have him be the Liberal nominee. Because remember, China doesn't need to interfere with the actual federal election. If a seat has been a Liberal stronghold and it's been voted Liberal the past however many elections, well, you just need to guarantee that the Liberal nominee, the Liberal candidate, is the one that you choose. You don't need to actually rig the election. You just need to rig the Liberal nomination race, which, again, they made easier by reducing the age required to vote in the Liberal nomination to 14. So it's almost like they knew exactly what they were doing and they wanted the system to be gained. But you would have to be a crazy conspiracy theorist to think that. Anyway, so here's what we have. We have the report of potential treason. We have conflicting summaries by May and Singh, who are also accusing Pierre Poilievre of being some kind of foreign asset, I'm sure, by refusing to get his security clearance to read the unredacted report. Of course, they're conveniently ignoring the words of former leader of the federal NDP, Tom Mulcair, who said he agreed 100% with Pierre Poilievre and would not have accepted that because he would be gagged. And you know that he would be gagged by the information because Elizabeth May, after declaring in her recent press conference that I'm not gagged, the very next question by a journalist being like, well, what did you read anything in the report about this? Well, that would be information I'm not comfortable with revealing. It's like, do you understand what words mean? She sounds retarded. Like, I'm not gagged. Pierre wouldn't be gagged if he read the report. Oh, well, what about this? Well, I can't say that because I'm not allowed to reveal that. Like, does she understand the words that are coming out of her mouth? Because I certainly don't. Anyway, so there's that. And then we've got Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, showing up on CTV trying to claim that the Liberals were actually the ones who wanted the public inquiry into foreign interference, and they're the most forward-leaning party on the issue of foreign interference. Every democracy has to put up with some level of foreign interference, but Canada, we're the most forward-leaning thanks to the Liberals because now we have a public inquiry. Oh, right, the public inquiry, right. Who wanted the public inquiry again? Oh, I remember, not the fucking Liberals. They were the ones who were pushing as hard as they could to prevent it from ever happening for as long as possible, and it was only the public outcry from Conservatives, although the NDP would be tapped. I'm sure Jagmeet Singh will tell you the NDP are a result of that. Fucking idiot. But no, the Conservatives said, hey, it's clearly obvious there's shenanigans going on. Stop appointing Trudeau Foundation members and old ski buddies as, quote, special rapporteurs to get you off the hook, you fucking crook. Let's actually have a public inquiry into foreign interference so that the public, the people voting for the people who are supposed to represent Canada, not foreign states, should know what's actually going on. And if you actually cared about national security, and if you weren't beholden to foreign interests, you would have been all for a public inquiry. But no, you fought it as hard as you could. And now here you are on CTV months later saying, oh, but no, the Liberals, we're forward-leaning. We have a public inquiry. The absolute hypocrisy and lies is just mind-blowing. Like, they literally go on TV and try to gaslight us every single fucking moment of the day. It's insane. So what's going to happen? What could possibly happen after all this? We've got We've got accusations of treason. We've got conflicting reports. The prime minister is off in Italy, not saying whether or not any of his MPs are implicated in this. And so, what can we do? Well, the reason this kind of interference keeps happening is because there's not much we can do. If you look at one of the CSIS reports, it says that politically and legally, there are no consequences for this level of foreign interference, and historically have not been. So, of course, this is what's going to continue to happen. And at the moment, all that we can do is leave it up to the parties to police their own nomination process, because that's where a lot of the interference is happening. It's not in the general election; it's the nomination at the actual party level. So we're going to let the party, like the Liberal Party, who changed their nomination rules right when Trudeau became party leader, by the way, 2015, became prime minister, changed it to make it easier for more people to vote, ostensibly for democracy. Of course, everything's always about democracy, except when it's hurting democracy, despite what you claim. And all they really did was make it easier for more people to game the system. And then on top of that, you had the busloads of Chinese students with falsified documents. So they did cheat, but it was pretty easy for them to cheat. So yeah, we're going to leave it up to those parties to police themselves for our national security. Yeah, great fucking idea. This is why we have the problem in the first place. Now, maybe there's a ray of hope. There's Bill C-70, which would change the CSIS Act, that law. So essentially that CSIS could collaborate more with law enforcement. It would introduce some new criminal offenses that we could actually charge people for foreign interference. And there's been some progress on that, but it hasn't occurred yet. So at the moment, what we have is potential traitors in Parliament, a prime minister who won't say boo and is out of the country, who's likely complicit, which is why he won't talk about it. We know he's already either pretended to or completely ignored the previous foreign interference reports, and has refused to do anything about them. So here we are. This is the state of our country, and what's going to happen? Likely nothing is what we're being told at the moment, essentially, because we don't know, and at the moment we can't know. And we certainly know that Jagmeet Singh won't be calling an election because, as he says, well, if he's concerned about the issue of foreign interference in elections, he's certainly not going to call an election. Of course, he has no ulterior motive there. He's a very stand-up guy and certainly puts the interests of Canada ahead of everything else, personal and otherwise. So, yeah, we're in a bit of a pickle, and hopefully we get some better news soon. So that's all I've got for today. Yeah, hope we get some good news or somebody actually gets held accountable for some of the bullshit that's going on